I was reading through some comments on some of my older videos the other day, and I came across this comment from B Henderson 2725 who says, "Yeesh, don't quit your day job, bud." And this comment was on my season standings predictions video for the 2024-25 season. And once I read this comment, I was like, it couldn't have been that bad, right? So I went back and looked at my standings predictions for this past season, and they were actually pretty damn bad. So now that the season is over, I figured it would be fun to look back at that video, look back at my predictions, see where I went wrong, and see some of the things I did get right. There is a few good predictions in there, but for the most part, it is pretty rough. If you guys enjoy these videos where I look back and react to some older predictions that I have made, then be sure to leave this video a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And listen, I don't want to be the only one roasting myself in this video, so let me know down below in the comments, what is one prediction you made before the start of the 2024-25 season that has aged very poorly? And with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off with the Pacific Division. I feel like this one wasn't too bad. I had 4 teams making the playoffs from the Pacific and 4 from the Central. Obviously, only 3 teams ended up making it from the Pacific, but I did predict all 3 of those teams to make the playoffs: Edmonton, LA, and Vegas. The order that I had those teams in was just not great. Obviously, having Vancouver second kind of threw a wrench into things. They were, in my opinion, one of the more disappointing teams in the league this past season, and I also really underestimated Vegas. Obviously, I had them finishing 4th, and they ended up finishing 1st place in the Pacific Division. I think the 2 biggest concerns about Vegas I had coming into the season was goaltending. You know, if Adin Hill went down or he struggled, were they going to be able to rely on a guy like Samsonov to provide them with solid backup goaltending? But for the most part, Adin Hill stayed healthy, and he was solid for them. And the other big concern I had for them coming into the season was their depth. I didn't think they were going to get a ton of depth scoring this season, but lo and behold, their depth scoring is actually a big reason why they had such a good regular season. You had guys like Brett Howden scoring 23 goals, Dorofeyev had a massive breakthrough season scoring 35, and they brought in players mid-season to help in the middle six like Riley Smith and Brandon Saad. All in all, I feel like the Pacific Division was pretty easy to predict coming into the season, in the sense that I think we all knew there was at least 3 teams that were guaranteed to make the playoffs, those teams being Edmonton, LA, and Vegas, and obviously all 3 of those teams did. They were the only 3 teams from the Pacific to make it. When it comes to the bottom of the division, we nailed San Jose 8th and Anaheim finishing 6th. But predicting Calgary to finish 7th definitely aged very poorly. I said that I thought Calgary was closer to being a team that could be in contention for a first overall draft pick than they were to being a playoff team, and I could not have been more wrong. They were in the hunt for a playoff spot right down until the final few days of the regular season. Overall, though, again, I feel like the Pacific Division wasn't too bad. Let's now move on to the Central, which is a lot worse than the Pacific Division. For the Central, I only got 3 out of the 5 playoff teams right. Like I previously mentioned, I had 4 teams making it from the Pacific and 4 from the Central. The 3 playoff teams that I got correct: Dallas, Colorado, and Winnipeg. However, I did really underrate Winnipeg, as I had them finishing 4th, and obviously they won the President's Trophy as the league's best regular season team. The 3 big misses here, though, are obviously St. Louis finishing 7th, Minnesota finishing 6th, and Nashville finishing 2nd. The Nashville Predators, to me, hands down the most disappointing team from this past season. I definitely got bamboozled by all their big fancy free agency signings. On paper, it looked like they really improved on a roster that just made the playoffs the year prior, so I was expecting a pretty strong season from them, but it actually ended up just being a complete disaster from start to finish. When it comes to St. Louis, one of the things I said coming into the season is I expected them to struggle offensively and struggle to create offense outside of guys like Thomas Kyrou and Buchnevich. But thanks to guys like Jake Neighbors, Zach Bolduc, and obviously Dylan Holloway all putting up career highs in points, they had a really nice layer of secondary scoring throughout the season. I was a big fan of their decision to offer sheet both Broberg and Holloway when it happened, but I'll admit I didn't think it would have this big of an impact this soon. Dylan Holloway especially, he finished 3rd on the team in scoring with 63 points. It looks like they have a star on their hands in Dylan Holloway. And another thing I was wrong about when it comes to the St. Louis Blues this season, this is something that happened mid-season. When they traded for Cam Fowler, I wasn't a huge fan of the move. I said in the video I made breaking down the trade that I just didn't expect it to be a trade that really moved the needle for St. Louis at all. But man, was I ever wrong. Cam Fowler has been an unbelievable fit in St. Louis. I think going from a team like the Anaheim Ducks, who have been pretty bad for a long time now, to a team like St. Louis, who are competing for a playoff spot, really rejuvenated Cam Fowler. In the playoffs especially, the dude was an absolute beast, one of the more impressive performers of the first round. So the Blues are definitely one of the teams that proved me wrong the most this past season. Minnesota is another one. I had them finishing 6th place. They weren't great offensively, but thanks to a huge bounce-back season from Philip Gustafsson in net and an an elite defense, they were able to make the playoffs despite the fact that Kirill Kaprizov only played half the season. So just like the Pacific Division with the Central, we only nailed 2 teams to finish in the position that they actually finished in. Those teams are the Chicago Blackhawks. I feel like that one was kind of a layup, and Colorado to finish 3rd. Moving on now to the Eastern Conference, starting off in the Metro Division, we got 2 out of the 3 playoff teams right, those teams being New Jersey and Carolina, but definitely some big misses here. The most notable, Washington finishing 5th. Obviously, they were the best team in the Eastern Conference during the regular season. Columbus finishing 8th was a big miss, and the Rangers finishing 2nd, similar to what I said about teams like Nashville and Vancouver. The Rangers were definitely one of the more disappointing teams in the entire league this season. On the opposite side of that spectrum, though, one of the most surprising teams was definitely the Columbus Blue Jackets. Like I said, having them finishing 8th place in the division was a big miss. They were in the hunt for a wildcard spot right up until the end of the season. They were an elite offensive team, especially on home ice, thanks to a Norris Trophy caliber season by Zach Werenski and big breakout years from guys like Kent Johnson, Kirill Marchenko, Adam Fantilli, and Dmitry Voronkov. I mean, just imagine where the Columbus Blue Jackets could have finished this season had they just gotten a little bit above league average goaltending. Even though they fell short of making the playoffs, definitely a really positive season for the Blue Jackets. The future looks insanely bright. They already have a lot of young studs contributing at the NHL level, and you still have a guy like Caden Lindstrom who is expected to, join that young core at some point in the near future. He looks like a beast. And another team who, like Columbus, were one of the more surprising teams in the NHL, the Washington Capitals. I had them missing the playoffs, finishing 5th place in the Metro after squeaking into the playoffs the year prior. And not only did they make the playoffs, like I said, they finished 1st place in the Eastern Conference. I'm sure there were quite a few people out there who predicted Washington to make the playoffs this season. But if anyone out there says that they predicted Washington to finish 1st in the Eastern Conference, I feel like they're either lying or are the most biased Washington Capitals fan in the world. There were so many different things that happened that went into the Washington Capitals having such an unreal season. Obviously, they had big breakout years from guys like Protas, Strome, and McMichael. They got a Vezina Trophy caliber season from Logan Thompson. Bringing in guys like Matt Roy and Jacob Chikrin really helped them solidify the back end. And you really can't say enough good things about Spencer Carberry behind the bench. I feel like he has already solidified himself as one of the better coaches in the entire NHL. I feel like Pierre-Luc Dubois going from such a disastrous season in LA and looking like one of the worst contracts in the NHL to so quickly turning it around in Washington and being a great two-way top 6 center for them speaks to the culture that Spencer Carberry has built in that locker room. He has everybody bought in and playing the right way. So like I said, the 3 big misses from the Metro for me were the Rangers, Capitals, and Blue Jackets. All in all, not too thrilled with how I did predicting this division. The only team that I actually guessed correctly to finish in the spot they finished in is the Pittsburgh Penguins, who finished 7th. Moving on now, finishing up the video with the Atlantic Division. I actually feel pretty good about how I did here. We nailed 4 out of the 8 teams, so 50% isn't too bad. The teams we nailed, Toronto finishing 1st, Ottawa finishing 4th, Detroit finishing 6th, and Buffalo finishing 7th. That being said, though, I did have 2 pretty huge misses predicting this division, those 2 misses being the Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens. I had Montreal finishing 8th place in the division, and I heard it from Canadiens fans all season long, and rightfully so. They definitely proved me wrong. Heading into this season, there was 4 teams that were often grouped together in the Atlantic, those teams being Ottawa, Montreal, Detroit, and Buffalo, and I had said that I thought Montreal was the furthest behind out of all 4 of those teams. I thought they were still at least 1 or 2 years away from being a legit threat to make the playoffs, but thanks to some elite goaltending and the majority of their young, core important players taking huge leaps, they were able to get in, and despite the fact that they were only able to win 1 playoff game, the vibes right now within the Montreal Canadiens fan base have to be insanely high heading into this offseason and heading into next season. I'm expecting Lane Hudson to be the 2025 Calder Trophy winner, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that they could end up having back-to-back Calder Trophy winners, because I think Ivan Demidov is definitely an early favorite to win it next season. And like I said, the other big miss that I had in the Atlantic Division is the Boston Bruins. It's funny, I feel like I can never get it right when predicting where the Boston Bruins are going to finish heading into a season. The few years prior to this one, I had them falling out of the playoffs and taking a big step back, and it just never happened. So then this season I was like, all right, I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I'm going to have them as a playoff team, and lo and behold, this is the season they finally took that step back and missed the playoffs. I'm really interested to see where the Boston Bruins go from here. They obviously made some big changes at and leading up to the trade deadline, moving on from their captain Brad Marchand, trading Brandon Carlo and Trent Frederick, but they still have quite a few guys locked up to big money long-term deals, so I would be surprised if they enter a full-on rebuild. I think they're a team that's going to try to retool on the the fly and look to be competitive again in the next few seasons, and we'll see if that happens, but there's no doubt about it, this season was very disappointing for the Bruins. So that is going to wrap up today's video reacting to and looking back at my season standings predictions for the 2024-25 season. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you want to see me make more videos like this where I look back at some older predictions and see how they aged, then leave this video a like and let me know down below in the comments that you enjoyed this one. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.